I have a telephone number in case anyone who needs cannot afford a lawyer and needs free legal assistance in filing your medical claim. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary, and although it's important to take care of your health, please don't let time slip away from you and not file a medical claim. So if you don't have a lawyer and you can afford a lawyer, I've got a telephone number for you. It's actually the Mississippi Center for Justice. Their telephone number is 1-888-725-5423. If you are not a resident of Mississippi, they will then direct you to your state's agency who can help you with that.
In terms of doing the blood work and the work in the clinical settings, have you experienced firsthand or even indirectly any pushback or pressure? Have you had any difficulty, if your medical staff had any difficulty or felt any pressure in terms of doing this actual medical research work?
It hasn't been a pushback on doing the medical research. What I'm finding across the board is that the medical community, when these people who are ill go to get medical care, they don't dismiss them, but they just say, oh, you just have, bronchitis, or oh, you have chemical pneumonia, and they don't try and correlate it back to the exposure. So they just try and give them some antibiotic, give them some pills, and dismiss them. And what we're trying desperately for is to get medical specialists that will deal with the exposure and the health symptoms and deal with these people over the long term. That's what we desperately need.
My daughter is 29 years old, and she had a miscarriage in October. And when she talked with the doctor, we live in Gulfport, Mississippi, the doctor said that never had she seen so many concentrated numbers of miscarriages over such a short period of time. There's no way that you can get any statistical data on that.
I hadn't heard that, so I can look at the tumor registry. That may be a reportable incident.
Okay.
That would go into the tumor registry. If not, if you could give me the doctor's name, I'd really appreciate it.
I'll have to ask her what her doctor's name is. But she also suffered a severe abscess to her face very shortly after she had her miscarriage. And then her son had left and right and then both eye infections very shortly after. And in Mississippi, there isn't a doctor anywhere around that will associate any maladies with the oil spill. And we're all terribly sick. And we can't get blood work. Nobody's taking us seriously. We're quickly dismissed. Our symptoms are treated. I can't tell you how many antibiotics they've put me on, and I still can't breathe.
Regarding the EPA and FDA standards that they came out with for the acceptable levels of the hydrocarbons in the seafood, as you stated in your little presentation, that they wouldn't necessarily, that would not be the standard carrying forward. Can you tell us how those figures were adjusted as a result of the Deepwater Horizon? I understand, it's only rumor, but I understand that prior to the Deepwater Horizon, that those levels, acceptable levels, were much lower and that they had raised them dramatically. And I was wondering if there's data available on that, like what the acceptable levels were prior to the Deepwater Horizon and then what they are now.
Okay, first of all, the chemicals of concern were the polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons for the Deepwater Horizon. They wouldn't establish for the petroleum hydrocarbons.
Okay.
The ones they established for the Deepwater Horizon were sometimes 10 times higher than the normal levels.
So they adjusted them up. 10 times more is acceptable now than it was before. Okay.
Right. Okay. And so I can pull that up for you if you'd like to see the two sets of numbers.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Subra, thank you for joining us today and letting us be here. My question is, me and my family live 28 miles. We live right past down below Golden Meadow, okay? And I have bronchial asthma. And I've been turned away from the doctors first off. My husband he worked 21 days out in the oil spill. His brother worked 90 days out there. None of them have been tested for anything. So, I mean, how do we go about getting the contacts? What kind of effects is that going to take on our bodies?
Okay, so the workplace environment, whoever they work for should have been performing testing on them. But I understand that most of the people who were employed by companies, those companies are not doing the testing.
Okay.
In order to have the blood test, you have to have a medical doctor write a request that then you can bring to a lab that draws the sample and sends it off to a reference lab, and we're using one in Georgia. But unless you have the doctor write that request, you can't have the test done.
Okay.
So if you talk to me after, I can give you some suggestions.
Thank you.
Okay.
How you doing there, Dr. Wilma? I was one of the workers that actually worked with the volunteers. And I went through some of the training with BP. And it was quite interesting what they would tell us, that when we would be around weathered oil, that the percentage of contaminants in the air were going to be low enough that we wouldn't need any protective gear as far as respirators or even masks. And when I joined, which is a good friend of mine that asked me if I would help him with this, when you go through the contract, it states that if you buy a respirator, because they weren't offering them, that you would be fired, and that the guy that actually had the job would be subject to reprimand himself. So it was kind of a pressure thing, from what it looked like, that just keep your mouth shut and do what you were told. I worked out there 3 months in the second zone, I guess you could say, or third. I was more or less on standby. And what we were discovering when we would go out to look for the oil, the next day, there was a white, like foamy residue, which we've recently discovered, we've heard through the grapevine, that they were spraying dispersants at night. So when we would go to find a 1-2 mile patch, there was nothing there but little globs. So it didn't really come into contact with oil directly, but when I left in September for 3 months, my eyes got so bad contracting to light, I couldn't even see the light from my cell phone. And I went to an ophthalmologist, I went to an eye doctor, and they tried to say this was in reference to salt water. I was an oyster fisherman for over 15 years. I was caught in squalls that would be just as close to as what you saw in Perfect Storm. I've never had problem with my eyes. I had a burning sensation. They would constantly water. I actually have photos and video that you would think I was a zombie. I mean, my eyes were like bloodshot red. And I just recently was declined representation by my attorney. He said, there's not enough information to verify that what you were subject to is connected to BP. So where does that leave me? I mean, is there any doctors or ophthalmologists or even attorneys that would be willing to take these guys on?
Yeah, and we can talk after, and I can give you some recommendations.
Well, a friend of mine's a fisherman, and he's recently went out about 15, 20 miles out in the Gulf, and he was telling me there were large, extreme patches still out there. And word is that they're possibly spraying dispersants. Is that true?
I get the complaints. I'm still getting the complaints that the dispersant is being sprayed, and I turn it into the feds, and they're saying they're investigating it, but no one will ever say we're doing something to stop it.
I'm Ginger Lambert. My husband is blind, and his eyesight was perfect July 28th. On August 4th, he was slapped in the face with some of the boom. And from that time, he's had trouble with his eyes. There is a doctor in Florida that is trying to help him. He has tested him for the toxins, which my husband has tested positive. He also has blood in his urine, which is coming from his kidneys. There is no one who wants to help you or do anything. We have a lawyer who is trying his best, but he's pushing a tide because there's no doctors here that will help you. They do not believe that the oil spill could have possibly caused any of this. When on July 28th, he tested his eyes to get a new driver's license because they were due on his birthday, which was August 5th. Well, on the 4th, like I said, he got slapped, and then he spent the rest of the time. Since then until now, we're still going to doctors. We've been to ophthalmologists, through Tulane, through Ochsner, through any place anyone said that they may be able to stop his vision from going blind, but nothing's working. And they have no cause. He's been tested for MS, ALS, everything, and brain tumors in his blood, heart trouble, nothing. Everything has come up negative. And we're at a stop. But now we're seeing a doctor in Florida who has found these toxins. But that's not going to help my husband. He's put him on a diet and is trying to get the stuff out of him. But we don't know what else to do or where to go.
Okay, are you looking for an additional doctor? I mean, I understand you're looking for to make him healthy.
Right.
Are you looking for an additional doctor?
Yes.
Okay, we have a couple. I'll talk to you after, and we'll give you the names of them. You can try.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
They said that all will be fine at the end of 2012, and I just, with the exception of the oyster beds, right? I just want to know what your opinion is on that.
Well, if you look at the report, it says all's going to be fine in 2 years for all of the seafood crop except oysters, and it'll be fine in 4 years. If you look at the data that was based on, it's got more holes and questions in it. But the individual that is doing the claims for BP requested this study so he could estimate how far he would have to pay these claims and how much he would have to pay. And since that study came out, there's been nothing but negative responses to the methods he used to develop that study. And in my opinion, it was inappropriate for him to try and determine those kind of numbers just for the claims. And then as a result of that, BP's going to take that and say, well, everything else, like, you know, the total damage is already done, we can start remediation, and we should be able to finish remediation in a short time too. So it set the wrong stage for all what we're going through here in the coastal areas. So I don't think it was an appropriate study.
My name is Elizabeth Cook. I'm with the Emergency Committee to Stop the Gulf Oil Disaster. I want to thank everyone for coming. We really do appreciate your time and attention. This is obviously an ongoing crisis, and I think it's time, to start calling it a crisis over and over again everywhere we go. This is a crisis, a health crisis, and it needs to be addressed. Now, it is overwhelming to hear the stories today and to see what happened to this young man. One thing that I've pledged to do is to create at least an online petition drive to demand that the Federal Health and Human Services and the CDC begin to address this as the crisis it is, and to circulate that petition, and I hope you'll help me with that. We'll send it everywhere. The other suggestion I have is that we begin to think of a larger action, as CJ suggested. Anyone who's had their health impacted, to make sure that they call the appropriate numbers to have it documented, even though you're not getting very good response. They put out the word from the beginning to call the poison centers, and I know people are getting pushed off, but we should do that so that it is documented. Also, Louisiana, I'm sure all the states have a number to call to document your health impacts, and that's 888-293-7020. And I called the number myself, and I did get a recording that said to leave the information, and the person on the other end of the line would call you back. This is, we know we're not going to, get a whole lot from these folks right now, but it is important, again, to document.
I thank God every day that I evacuated my children from Venice for 2 months during the height of the spill. That was the hardest fight I've ever had to fight with my husband, who's my best friend, since we've been married. We just celebrated 10 years. But I made the tough decision and I sent him out. And then I brought him back after they said they had stopped spraying. So now here we are in Venice again.
I talked to the oil spill commission guy and I looked him in the face and said, so you're telling me that the 1990 Oil Spill Act had no regulations whatsoever for the health care of the citizens? And he looked at me and says, no. I said, wow. Wow, are you kidding me? Wow, I did. Wow. I mean, does that amaze y'all?
My name is Mary Lee Orr, and I want to thank everybody who's taken time out of their life today to be here. I want to thank Wilma, whom I talk to, I'm not exaggerating, at least 10 times a day, 7 days a week. I mean, she is truly a sister for me. And for my most precious treasures in my life, which are my 2 sons who've been out there getting the data, sampling the data, etc. So that said, everybody here, I want to thank you for your generosity of sharing your VOC testing results and letting us share it with the world and letting people know. I'm like Cherri and other people in this room. Please keep all of us in your prayers that we can continue to do this. But I also want to, if anybody here would like to give me their name and number and would like an organization that could help them do detox for free, that they'll do detox for free for 6 months, I can get you associated with them. If you feel that that's the right decision for you. We also have some doctors who are willing to help, but it's like you were saying, Denise, I think, or someone up there was saying, $250 an hour is way out of our membership range for a lot of people. The people who can afford it, that's great, and we appreciate those doctors. But I just wanted to say that each and every one of you have been so generous with your stories. I appreciate it, because every day I hear about spontaneous vomiting, diarrhea, blood coming out of people's ears, blood coming out of their urine, the young man who has seizures, people who have chest pains, a 30-year-old young man who lays in his bed and cries himself to sleep or cries all night long because he's in such pain. So every day we're trying to be out there to help you guys, and God bless you and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't have a lawyer and you can afford a lawyer, I've got a telephone number for you. It's actually the Mississippi Center for Justice. Their telephone number is 1-888-725-5423. If you are not a resident of Mississippi, they will then direct you to your... I have a telephone number in case anyone who needs cannot afford a lawyer and needs free legal assistance in filing your medical claim. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary, and although it's important to take care of your health, please don't let time slip away from you and not file a medical claim. So if you state's agency who can help you with that.
In terms of doing the blood work and the work in the clinical settings, have you experienced firsthand or even indirectly any pushback or pressure? Have you had any difficulty, if your medical staff had any difficulty or felt any pressure in terms of doing this actual medical research work